Number 10. The Earth's core. I know we all want to get into some creepy spooky stuff, but let's start with a little mini science lesson. The Earth's crust is the second highest layer of the Earth, only being underneath the sea level. Then we have the mantle and the cores, which are incredibly hot, and we really can't explore because, well, our machinery would likely just melt. The core is the very center of the Earth and the hottest, around 5,200 degrees Celsius, and here's where it gets weird. Scientists discovered that the core of the Earth is actually asymmetrical. They discovered that seismic waves caused by earthquakes travel faster through the core going north and south than they do going east and west. This causes the iron that solidifies on the sides of the core to grow more on one side and leaving the core lopsided. Scientists actually have no idea why this is happening, though I think it's because there's an ancient colony of dinosaurs living down there, or something. I think I saw a documentary on it once.
In our number 9 spot, we have the unlucky mummy. The unlucky mummy is an artifact that people legit believed started World War I. Oh, and the object was rumored to have sunk the Titanic. That's a very, very unlucky mummy. The unlucky mummy is an ancient Egyptian artifact that's either a painted wooden mummy board or an inner coffin lid that's now located in a British museum. It was originally found in Thebes and can be dated by its shape and style to around 950 to 900 BC. A British journalist obsessed with the fact that he thought it had magical powers analyzed it for some time, and after 3 years at only age 36 he mysteriously passed away. People believed that the unlucky mummy was the reason. Wow, it's so wild to think about how different people's thoughts were back then compared to how people think now. Did people back then have crazy imaginations, or are we too unimaginative and logical now that we miss the magic? Would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below.
Number 8. The Betz Mystery Sphere. The so-called Betz Mystery Sphere was found in the 70s and is exactly as its name suggests, a sphere, being completely smooth except for a triangular symbol. When they found it, they thought it was space junk and they picked it up and took it home. But then they noticed it had some strange properties, like seeming to hum and resonate with certain noises like guitar playing. They also realized that when rolled, it would change directions on its own and often return back to where it had started. When this was discovered, the Betz family were swarmed by media wanting to get a look at the mystery sphere. Many people witnessing the sphere's strange activities and the way it would completely change directions in no time at all with no outside influence. To this day, it's not known what the Betz Mystery Sphere actually was. It's still a mystery, some people citing it as some sort of alien orb. Unfortunately, we probably never will get a true answer as the current whereabouts of the sphere are unknown. Number 7. Prosthetics. Archaeologists are no strangers to digging up weird bodies and burial sites, but this one seemed especially strange. In the north of Italy, they found a body, among others, that seemed to come from the 6th to 8th century. Obviously, this alone isn't weird, they find bodies all the time. What was weird is that the man had an amputated hand, and he had a knife as his prosthetic. Within the grave, they also found the skeleton of a headless horse and several greyhound dogs. Upon examining the man, they found that his body was an incredible story of survival for a person who had received an amputation before proper medical practices and antibiotics existed. They knew that the knife was a prosthetic and not just something he'd been buried with because the arm and knife both showed the signs of having been attached for a long time. Personally, I think this guy was probably the inspiration for Merle Dixon on The Walking Dead. Number 6. The Black Sarcophagus. Around 4 years ago, a meme went around the internet about drinking the sarcophagus juice. So where did that come from? The juice came from the Black Sarcophagus. In summer of 2018, they found a massive black granite sarcophagus buried deep in Egypt, untouched for around 2,000 years. Many people believed that the sarcophagus would contain some deadly curse and that we should not open it. But they did open it and they found, well, juice. It contained 3 skeletons and a red-brown sewage-like liquid, apparently giving off a completely unbearable stench. It was so bad that when they first opened it only 2 inches, everyone vacated the premises. So did the tomb have a curse in it? Well, one of the archaeologists said the following: "We've opened it and thank God the world has not fallen into darkness." Well, I think he may have said that a bit prematurely. With the state of the world today, we may want to go back and consider that maybe it was the sarcophagus juice that cursed us. Number 5. Williams Enigmalith. In the late 1990s, an electrical engineer called John J. Williams was on a hike when he saw a strange rock sticking out of the ground. How it would have looked different from any other rock on a hike, I'm not sure, but he proceeded to dig it up, and he found that it was in fact very strange. That's because it appeared to have a metal piece attached to it, resembling the male end of an electrical plug. It became known as the Williams Enigmalith. Enigmalith being a combination of the words enigma and monolith. He consulted both an engineer and a geologist to take a look at the rock, and they revealed that the electrical component within the granite showed no sign of ever having been glued or welded. The rock itself looking to be around 100,000 years old. Williams has apparently encouraged scientists to examine the rock, but none have ever stepped up to do so. Maybe because they don't want us to know the truth about it. Number 4. Alien skulls. If you've seen Indiana Jones, then you're probably familiar with the concept of the crystal skulls. Skulls with elongated heads that are going to be used to somehow conquer the world or something. Well, it turns out that these skulls aren't just a work of fiction, and if you sat around watching History Channel with your dad as a kid, then you may have seen the special they did about the search for the real crystal skulls. Well, in a Mexican graveyard, researchers found a total of 25 skulls, 13 of them having these long-headed malformations. When you look at pictures of them, they definitely look like they must be something alien, coming from another planet. Researchers, however, believe that this comes from a cultural practice of stretching the skull, as it was maybe a sign of higher social status. Personally, I'm gonna keep believing it was aliens. So far, no real confirmed crystal skulls have actually been found, but maybe someday they will. Number 3. Antikythera mechanism. In the early 1900s, this 2,000-year-old artifact was found off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera. It is shaped like a circular gear with other mechanisms seeming to attach to it. Scientists have been trying for decades to try and figure out what this is and what it could have possibly been used for around 2,000 years ago, some describing it to be the first ever computer. While it may not look like a work of art to you, a professor at Cardiff University said it was extraordinary, describing how everything was perfect and seemed to be done very carefully, even going so far as to compare it to the Mona Lisa. Upon close study, it seems to track the solar system, like the time of day as well as even eclipses. It's the most complex piece of machinery from its era, and nothing similar came around for a very long time. Some people bringing into question the idea that humans had some sort of outside influence to help build this computer. Number 2. The Voynich manuscript. If you're a fan of rare books, then this one is for you. The Voynich manuscript was rediscovered in the early 1900s, though it had previously circulated through the hands of emperors and rulers. To this day, we don't actually know what the book says, as it is written in an indecipherable language and its illustrations are just as confusing. The pictures include things like otherworldly plants, non-existent constellations, and naked women swimming through strange tubes and green baths. Almost every page includes these fantastical drawings and strange texts about things that seem like they must come from another world. The book was written back in the 15th to 16th century, and perhaps the person who wrote it had a window to another planet, or perhaps a parallel universe. Copies of the manuscript are now available to purchase, along with historical and scientific perspectives on the book, if you're interested in taking a look for yourself. Number 1. Vampire skeletons. Vampire imagery and stories have been around for centuries, even spanning all the way back to the Bible if you saw my other video on that. But as it stands, we don't really have any true evidence or proof of the existence of vampires, unless you think the Twilight series was a documentary. In Poland, one team excavated a group of bodies that seemed to date back to the 14th century. Again, not super weird, their job is basically finding bodies. But what was different about these ones is that they appear to have been taken apart after their death, not by grave robbers or site disturbers, but immediately after they had died and were being buried. They had their heads removed and had been punctured through the spine, their heads being held under large stones. Researchers believe that this is due to the fear of vampires, and the people burying them believed them to be blood-sucking monsters and buried them this way to prevent them from ever rising up again. Well, I guess it worked.
Number 10. Spaceballs. Over the course of decades, humans have begun to clog up the Earth's surrounding area with space junk. Defunct projects, satellites, broken or discarded pieces of spacecrafts. It will become a serious problem at some point, and it's beginning to show. There have been many instances now of strange metallic balls crashing into the ground and being found in multiple countries: Mexico, Spain, Vietnam, Namibia, Australia, and many others. They hurtle towards the Earth, and some have crashed a little too close for comfort. Most of these mysterious objects seem to just be auxiliary fuel tanks from satellites that were discarded or crashed nearby, and they fell off early, landing in a completely different place than was planned. But some of these, like the one in Mexico, still require more investigation, as they don't match any of the parts that we would have expected to be entering our atmosphere. This one even has an antenna, and reportedly fell from the sky while making strange noises, but was not accompanied by any fire, like a lot of debris entering the atmosphere would have. So where did these things come from then? Number 9. WTF. In 2013, the Catalina Sky Survey at the University of Arizona spotted an object in the night sky, and it seemed to have some weird properties. The object didn't move as though it was solid like rock, but it seemed to possibly be hollow, and it had a density of about 10% that of water, and it seemed to be about 6.5 feet in diameter. Large enough to house a person. But this didn't match any of the space junk that space agencies had been tracking for previous years, and adding even more to the confusion, the object seemed to disappear from sight, and it was not seen again until 2 years later, when it was officially given the name WT1190F, or WTF for short. Pretty fitting. Video and photos were taken of the object's re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, which was a scientific feat on its own, but the object was never recovered. It is assumed that it burned up from the immense heat of re-entry, but many people believe that it crashed into the ocean, and whatever was inside was either captured or lies in wait at the bottom of the sea, like those UFOs NASA admits that they found. Remember those? That was crazy. Number 8. Struck by a space rock. Alright, we've got two stories here, and you can either think of them as the result of a curse, or karma, or cosmic coincidence, but either way, these two women had a bad day. In 2001, Lottie Williams was exercising in a park in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when she looked up and saw a great ball of fire in the air. It was a rocket coming back towards Earth. She watched it approach, and as it got larger in the sky, she expressed her worry to her friends, but then it broke up into pieces, and it was no longer visible to her. A few moments later, she felt what she described as a tap on her shoulder, and then something fell to the ground. This small blackened piece of metal had fallen from the rocket and just grazed her, and it could have been a lot worse, but she walked away being the first person to be hit by man-made space debris. But another woman was not as lucky. On November 30th, 1954, Ann Hodges was napping in her Alabama home when a piece of meteorite crashed through her roof and struck her in the side. It left a 3-foot wide hole in her roof and also left a massive bruise on her thigh and hand where she was hit. Luckily, the damages were only surface level, and though she went to the hospital the next night, it was because of her stress, not the injury. But if the space rock had been a few inches to the side, Ann would not have lived to tell the tale as the first person to be struck by a meteorite. I'm not sure if she's cursed with extremely bad luck or has really good luck. I'll leave that up to you. Number 7. Skylab. Launched by NASA as the first American space station, Skylab was cursed with issues from the moment it launched. The station strapped to a Saturn V rocket sustained severe damage during its deployment, including the loss of the station's micrometeoroid shield and one of its main solar panels, requiring it to have the first ever repair to an object in space, which is pretty cool. But it was again hit with problems when one of the pieces destabilized from orbit earlier than expected and crashed back to Earth. But it doesn't stop there. Due to increased solar activity, Skylab actually ended up falling towards Earth a year earlier than it was supposed to. There was supposed to be a shuttle mission to boost it back into orbit, but the shuttle wasn't ready in time. In an international media frenzy, the Skylab crash was everywhere. People had shirts with targets, contests were made to bring pieces of the wreckage for cash prizes, and people waited for the show. Due to a 4% calculation error on re-entry, the station did not burn up as quickly as expected, and pieces fell into Australia only 300 miles from Perth in an almost completely unpopulated area. Man, talk about a crash and burn. These scientists missed the mark so many times it's impressive the thing even hit Earth. Number 6. 300 million year old machine part. In 2013, a Russian man named Dmitry was adding coal to a fire when he noticed something strange. A shiny piece of metal was sticking out of the rock, and when he broke open the piece of coal, he found what seemed to be a piece of a metal bar with teeth, like a piece of a gear. When analyzed, it was found to be made of aluminum with about 3% magnesium, an alloy that is not generally produced today. Not only that, but further examination shows machining marks, implying that it's a man-made piece, and it's similar to those that we may find in a modern microscope or other small machinery. But no one can explain how a seemingly man-made part appears in a piece of coal that was 300 million years old. So was this thing a remnant of a past unknown civilization? Maybe something from a time traveler or alien? One explanation is that it could have fallen to Earth from a meteorite all that time ago, but it wouldn't explain the fact that it seems man-made. This little hunk of metal continues to baffle scientists today. Number 5. Nuclear nuisance. The Cosmos 954 reconnaissance satellite launched by the Soviet Union in 1977 had some major issues. The launch went fine. Unlike Skylab, its deployment also went off without a hitch, and this long-term orbital satellite seemed like another mission success for the Soviet space program. It was meant to be circling the globe for years and years, but just 3 months later, the North American Aerospace Defense Command noticed the satellite making erratic maneuvers, changing the altitude of its orbit by up to 50 miles. And in secret meetings, the Soviet officials warned their US counterparts that they had lost control over the vehicle, and the system, which was intended to propel the spent nuclear reactor core into a safe disposal orbit, had failed. And just 4 months after its launch, it fell towards the Earth, right over Canada's Northwest Territories. The Soviets claimed that it had completely disintegrated upon re-entry, but that was not the case, as we discovered a 600-kilometer path of debris leading through the country. And a huge portion of it was radioactive because they failed to launch the reactor out. We Canadians began Operation Morning Light, a recovery effort that lasted over a year and for which we billed the Soviet Union $6 million, though they only ever paid us $3 million. Many small pieces of debris were collected, as well as 12 large portions of the satellite, only 2 of which were not radioactive. Number 4. Proof of panspermia. The theory of panspermia is that life did not naturally begin on Earth, but that it began with microbes stuck in space ice that fell to Earth on meteorites, and the amount of debate around this topic is huge, and we have a few examples that may just prove the theory. The Polonnaruwa meteorite was one that fell in Sri Lanka in 2012, and meteorites are always a good find, but this one was different. 12 days after it was witnessed falling through the sky, a scientist published a paper stating that after studying some electron micrographs, his team discovered fossilized diatoms, microscopic phytoplankton, inside the meteorite. In addition, his team of scientists reported in a separate article that they are certain that it is a meteorite that originated from a comet that also contained living diatoms. The microbes were remarkably similar to those found on Earth, leading to a debate on whether it was simply contaminated from the Earth's surface. But there is another example with even stronger proof of microscopic alien life. In 2018, a meteorite landed on a frozen lake in Michigan, and when it was examined, thousands of organic compounds that were formed billions of years ago were found. It helped that the quick recovery, along with the cold temperature, kept the water inside frozen for studying. Research is still being done, but this find has thrown the scientific world for a loop. Hopefully the organisms don't leave us with some alien curse or disease. Number 3. The Chelyabinsk meteor. Many of us will remember the 2013 meteor that rocked the world. At 20 meters in diameter, it was the largest natural object to enter our atmosphere since the Tunguska event, which destroyed a wide, remote, forested, and very sparsely populated area of Serbia. The Chelyabinsk meteor also is the only meteor confirmed to have resulted in many injuries, though they were all from indirect causes. There are many videos of the event and they are truly terrifying, especially when you learn that the meteor was completely undetected until it entered our atmosphere, which caused worldwide panic. The flash as it began to burn up was brighter than the sun, and when it exploded midair, the energy output was equivalent to the atomic weapon used on Hiroshima, sending out a massive shockwave that damaged buildings and was felt and heard for hundreds of miles. All of the 1,500 people injured were hurt while running or from broken glass or other indirect factors of the meteor. There was even another meteor which was detected to have a close approach on the same day, which was 10 meters larger and flew by us only 16 hours later. Man, February 15th, 2013 was a busy day for meteors. Number 2. Oumuamua. Discovered by the University of Hawaii's Pan-STARRS-1 telescope in 2017, Oumuamua is the first known interstellar object to visit our solar system. It was originally classified as a comet, but there were no signs of cometary activity after we witnessed its slingshot past the sun at a blistering speed of 196,000 miles per hour, or 87.3 kilometers per second. It was briefly classified as an asteroid until new measurements found it was accelerating slightly, which is very strange for any interstellar body. This massive cigar-shaped object is nearly a quarter-mile long, or 400 meters, and its elongated shape is unlike anything we've witnessed in our solar system. Observation has shown that it may have come from the star system of Vega, though with the speed it was moving, it would have taken over 300 million years to make the journey to our solar system, and Vega was nowhere near that position at that time, leading to further questions. Many scientists believe that this could actually be an alien superstructure, as its strange journey and acceleration are studied more and more. Paul Kotis, manager of the Center for Near-Earth Object Studies at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, said that it's a strange visitor from a faraway star system, shaped like nothing we've ever seen in our own solar system neighborhood. Whether it's just an interstellar asteroid or someone coming to see what's up with Earth, we may never know, as it's being launched away from us after making a slingshot maneuver around our sun, the angle and trajectory of which some use as proof as the object being controlled or even driven by something. And finally, we reach our number one, the Hypatia Stone. The Hypatia Stone is one of the single greatest astronomical discoveries that we have ever made. Found in the Sahara Desert by Ali A. Barakat, this is no ordinary meteorite, but one that contains the remnants of a rare type of supernova. Some have even described it as a supernova in a bottle. Named after the ancient mathematician and astronomer Hypatia, who was the first female scholar in her field to have her life and accomplishments recorded, overcoming sexism in the process, scientists are still learning more about its origins. It's believed that the stone was born in what is known as a Type 1a supernova, a rare kind of supernova where a dying star or white dwarf begins to leech energy off of a nearby star and regains energy in the process. These so-called vampire stars circle each other until the white dwarf has recovered enough energy to reignite the stellar reactions and explodes in a massive cloud of dust and pure energy, shooting things imbued with strange elements out into the ether. Measuring the metals found inside the stone is how we verified that it came from this kind of supernova, and that it crashed to Earth nearly 28 million years ago after being launched through space by the explosion. Having a supernova in our hands has helped us answer so many questions about the physics of space, but if you ask me, if there was one interstellar item that could have an alien curse, it's the rock that contains pieces of a rare supernova. Sounds like something an alien from Doctor Who would need to power their death machine or something.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Ring of Sylvanus. Anyone a fan of The Lord of the Rings? I'm a mega fan, so if you are, reach out to me and let's be friends. But anyways, you may not know this, but the ring exists. Yep, it's real. Allegedly, J.R.R. Tolkien was inspired by a ring called the Vain Ring, or the Ring of Sylvanus, that was said to be cursed. It was a gold ring dating to the 4th century AD, England, and it was the property of a man named Sylvanus in 1785. It was apparently stolen, and Sylvanus put a curse on it. Eventually, it became the property of the Shute family, and their property eventually became a national trust property, and the ring is on display there. In 1929, a man named Sir Mortimer Wheeler discovered the curse upon it and discussed the details of the curse, such as the god invoked, with a very famous man by the name of J.R.R. Tolkien, thus birthed the story about the one powerful ring. Man, if there was one person dead that I could meet, it would be him. He created his own language, folks. I wish I could pick his brain on his thoughts about life. Anyways, this object is locked away in a display case, so we should be good. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button so you can watch more content like this.
Number 9. The Devil's Claw. In the 1980s, a group of explorers took to New Zealand to look underneath the mountain. What they found was probably something that they never would have expected. Eventually, they came upon pieces of bones, attached to flesh, attached to what looked like a dinosaur's claw. It had 3 long fingers, each with their own long pointed claw, forming an entire hand. But like most dinosaur bones, this one didn't look like it had been dead for centuries, instead looking like it had only died very recently. The whole team was now stuck in this deep dark cave under a mountain, surrounded by remains of what appeared to be some sort of modern dinosaur or monster. Some people that have seen the hand say that it reminds them of the devil, and looks like it is his hand that somehow appeared in the ground of New Zealand. Others believing it to come from an ancient bird that used to roam there.
In our number 8 spot, we have the Hexam heads. The Hexam heads were a pair of small stone heads about 6 centimeters high, found in 1971 in a British town called Hexham by 2 boys by the name of Colin and Leslie Robson. They were digging in a garden when they stumbled across them and they brought them inside. Right away, paranormal phenomena began to happen in their house. One boy's hair was pulled at night, the heads would mysteriously be in new places, bottles were being thrown across the room, and their mother saw a man that was seemingly half man, half goat leaving the house. When the artifacts were given to a Celtic artifact expert, she and many others noticed a half man, half wolf leave the house or move about the house on many occasions. The woman also reported the feeling of a cold presence and her office door opening with no wind, and the cause remained unknown. The heads got passed around a lot until suddenly they vanished, and their whereabouts still remain unknown. Dun dun dun. In our number 7 spot, we have the Crying Boy. The Crying Boy is a fascinating phenomenon. This is a mass-produced print of a painting by an Italian painter by the name of Giovanni Bergolin, and the painting is literally of a boy crying. This painting was widely distributed in the 50s, but in the 80s, a theory around the painting began to arise, and people started to think that the painting was cursed. On September the 5th, 1985, a British newspaper reported that a firefighter had stated that undamaged copies of the painting were being found frequently at sites of burned houses. Of course, people began to believe that it was the paintings that were behind it because they would somehow come out untouched. It was later learned that the paintings did have varnish on them that made them fire retardant. However, the boy in the paintings was later discovered, a man named Don Bonillo, and apparently he is tied to several fires, including the painter's studio. Yikes, okay, well this is scary. I hope all of these paintings were somehow disposed of. I'm assuming not by fire, but in some way, but if not, then they need to be locked away in a fireproof cabinet of some sort. In our number 6 spot, we have the Bassano vase. The Bassano vase is a vase that needs to be locked away, and we need to also throw away the key because it is terrifying. I know, it seems like an object that is just not threatening at all. I mean, come on. It's a vase. Something you put beautiful flowers in. Anyways, the vase is believed to be from the 15th century in Napoli, Italy. Apparently anyone that was ever the owner of it has died. I mean, that is inevitable, right? We're all mortal humans. No, they died within a few months of having it. The original owner apparently died with it in her arms. The vase was passed between a bunch of hands in the 80s before it disappeared, and no one is quite sure where it is located at this moment. In our number 5 spot, we have the Bronze Lady. Okay, so this next one can't necessarily be locked up because it's a giant bronze statue, but I'm putting it on this list so y'all can have caution if you ever go near it. Okay, this statue is located in the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Yes, the famous cemetery. You may be going there to see ghosts, but apparently the Bronze Lady is who you should be watching out for. She allegedly wanders the cemetery grounds at night, terrifying anyone who may have entered the grounds. They say that you can hear her weeping if you get close to her, and if you sit on her lap, she'll cry tears of blood. They say if you insult her and hit her in the face, you will be cursed for life. Who the heck is doing that and why? Apparently many a visitor have ran from the cemetery after an encounter with her. Damn. In our number 4 spot, we have the Robert doll. Well, right off the bat, I want to lock this one up because of its name. This sounds like the creepiest doll ever. Not that there's anything wrong with the name Robert. I even have a cousin named Robert. It's just Robert and doll together. Sounds creepy. I don't know. Anyways, looking at this doll, I have to say that the creepiness of the name totally matches it. This must be top 5 creepiest dolls ever, but I wouldn't know. I don't watch a lot of doll movies, and it's been a long time since I've played with them. I do miss my Barbie days, not gonna lie. The doll was made in Germany and purchased in 1904 and given to a boy named Robert Otto. The legend is that the doll has supernatural powers. After Otto passed away and the doll was passed around, people said that the doll caused car accidents, broken bones, job loss, divorce, and people that visited the museum that it was eventually put in would supposedly experience post-visit misfortunes for failing to respect Robert, whatever that means. I bet you they were insulting Robert like the Bronze Lady statue. Who are all these disrespectful animals? In our number 3 spot, we have the Hope Diamond. This is a very, very beautiful diamond that unfortunately is cursed. So much so that no one should own it. I just realized something. If you were someone that owned such a crazy expensive expensive diamond. Would you not do whatever you could to protect it and make sure it was not stolen, such as create a rumor around it possibly being cursed so no one would try to steal it? I mean, I probably would. I wonder if perhaps that's how this started. Anyways, allegedly the Hope Diamond is cursed and has brought about a lot of death in its time. It was extracted in the 17th century in India. Owners of the Hope Diamond were either killed or experienced extreme misfortune. So after a while, it just gained a poor reputation. It's most likely cursed. In our number 2 spot, we have the cursed ring. This is a ring that needs to be locked up in a vault pronto because it is absolutely cursed. It was once called the Destiny Ring by a shopkeeper who did not want to sell it, but apparently actor Rudolph Valentino had to have it. It was the 1920s, and after buying this ring, a series of unfortunate events happened to him before he ended up passing away. A series of unfortunate events actually happened to all who obtained the ring for many years until the ring was bought in an auction in 2017, and there has been no word as to whether the owner of it is still okay. Why oh why was this ring not thrown into a vault? I will never understand people. In our number 1 spot, we have the Belleroy Chair of Death. You may be surprised to hear that this is not the only chair that supposedly brings about death, but the other chair is so widely talked about that I thought I would talk about this one on this list. This chair, the Belleroy chair, is a chair that's from the Belleroy mansion that is believed to be very haunted. It's a 200-year-old blue chair that sits in the drawing room called the Blue Room. The chair apparently was once owned by Napoleon, and it was made in the 18th century by a person that practices sorcery. So how is this chair bad, you may ask? Well, the legend around this chair is quite fascinating. Allegedly, a red mist floats around the chair, and people say that the mist is a spirit named Amelia. This spirit allegedly sucks the breath out of anyone that sits in the chair, sucking out their life force, and they pass away a few days later. This literally sounds like a part of the plot of Hocus Pocus. I bet you they got their inspiration for the movie from this.
In at number 10, we have the eBay mirror. So I remember reading this story a few years ago and being absolutely fascinated. 2 guys living in a shared house in Muswell Hill, London, started experiencing weird goings on when their landlord hung a mirror in the house. This mirror was reportedly found in a skip, or dumpster, right outside the property. 20-year-old student Joseph Birch and 34-year-old painter Sotiris Charalambous say that they were immediately met with bad feelings, followed by bad luck, misery, and even sickness. Charalambous even said he woke up in the night screaming with stabbing pains. He attributed all of this horror to the mirror. Things became enough for the pair when Birch said he saw flickering shadows and glimpses of black darkness coming from the mirror. He then woke up with scratch marks all over himself. The pair put the mirror on eBay for £100 and sold it for just over the asking price. I, for one, would not want to own that mirror though.
Okay, moving on to number 9, we have bunk beds. In 1987, a haunted bunk bed in Wisconsin became a topic of national coverage when a family dramatically fled their home in winter after reports of hauntings. Later, the TV show Unsolved Mysteries documented the paranormal activities. It all started when Alan and Debbie Tallman bought bunk beds from a secondhand shop and immediately noticed strange goings-on in their home in a small town of Horicon. Soon the family noticed the radio would switch on its own, and the children who slept in the bed saw an ugly old woman in their room. As things started opening and closing on their own accord in the same room as the bed, the family got their local pastor in, who felt that there was a devil in the bed. After things went bad to worse, the family destroyed the bunk beds and left the house. I think they did the right thing. And now moving on to number 8, we have more craziness. We got the teddy bear. Teddy bears are supposed to be used for, cuddling and comfort, not for smothering people. One teddy bear in India caused a stir on the internet in July of 2016, so it happened earlier on this year in the summertime, as footage was released on YouTube of a reportedly possessed bear. Uploader Paris Diwa captured the video in which the huge stuffed bear seems to move on its own. I mean, is this real life right now? Many YouTube viewers are questioning the authenticity of the footage, but who knows?
Warning, this next haunted object has actually caused people who see the picture of it to experience shocking symptoms. Are you ready, Landon?
Are we gonna show them the picture?
Yeah,
Ooh.
And there's some shocking stuff going on, so close your eyes to this next one if you're scared of that kind of thing.
I'm scared.
In At number 7, we have Peggy. In 2015, footage of a creepy doll caused absolute chaos around the world, inciting paranormal enthusiasts, with many feeling chest pains and experiencing headaches and visions after viewing the pictures or videos of her. British paranormal investigator Jane Harris, based in Shropshire, says that she was inundated with messages after images and footage of Peggy were posted on the internet. Harris runs an organisation called Haunted Dolls and was given the doll by a petrified woman. She is thought to have the power to visit people in their dreams, even haunting one woman to warn her about her cat that died the next day. Spooky. One woman even said that she had a heart attack just hours after viewing a picture of Peggy. Mediums who have worked with Peggy believe that she is linked to the Holocaust. Terrifying.
Following that, now at number 6, Bassano vase. The story goes that a 15th century carved silver vase was given to an Italian bride on her wedding night in Napoli. That very evening, she was murdered and vowed to seek vengeance. After her death, it became clear that the family members that her spirit had somehow possessed the vase and caused death and misery to all those who touched it. After a period of time, the vase was buried and reportedly unearthed in 1988. The vase contained a warning note about the bad luck associated with its possession. The owner auctioned it for 4 million lira, so that's around $2,500 at the time. The new owner died and triggered a similar pattern in the new era of deaths. The vase has now been buried, and you should not go looking for it.
Okay, this really creeps me out. In at number 5, we have the Anguished Man painting. To be honest, looking at this painting, I have absolutely no idea who would want to own it. It is even more terrifying than a Phoebe Buffay creation. Sean Robinson acquired the Anguished Man painting from his grandmother, who believed that the artist used part of his own blood to paint the picture. The painting is said to be haunted by the spirit of the artist, and Sean has even set up a YouTube channel to document some of the crazy goings on surrounding the picture. This includes doors slamming and the air in the room changing to make it all cold. It is now said to be locked in the basement of Mr. Robinson's house, where I think it should stay forever, and then he should move, and no one should ever go there.
Robert the doll, another doll, and this one is horrifying.
Sorry, did you say another doll?
Another doll.
I'm out of here.
There's too many dolls in this list. And as Rebecca walks off, we continue. Everybody meet Robert. Robert is a 20th century sailor doll that used to belong to Eugene Otto. Eugene used to blame many naughty things he did on Robert, and the pair would often be overheard talking. Eugene's parents assuming Robert's voice was really Eugene. When Eugene died in 1974, Robert was left in the attic and was discovered by the next owners in the home. And they had a 10-year-old daughter. The small girl was terrified of Robert and claimed he wanted to kill her. Neighbors of the house would swear they saw Robert at the window on occasion, and the plumber would work at the house found the doll to move across the room on its own. A reporter from the area, Malcolm Ross, visited the house to see Robert and was disturbed to sense that Robert was listening to his conversation and was understanding him. A final doll, and perhaps the scariest of them all, we have the basis for the movie The Conjuring and Annabelle. At number 3, we have Annabelle the doll. Annabelle currently lives in a glass box at the Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, run by Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens received the doll after it lived with a student nurse and her roommate in the 1970s. The doll behaved strangely, so the pair contacted a medium who suggested she was haunted by a dead girl named Annabelle Higgins. The pair tried to nurture and care for the girl, but she turned out to be malicious and evil, leading the pair to give the doll away. That was a good choice.
Have we finished talking about dolls?
I have a feeling we're not finished.
We have. I think we have.
Okay.
Promise me, because if not, I'm not coming back.
Okay, moving on from dolls, we got
Yeah, moving on from dolls, we have Busby's stoop chair. Mystery. Now located on the ceiling at the Thirsk Museum in North Yorkshire, the infamous Busby stoop chair has been linked to many deaths over the years. The story goes that a Yorkshireman named Thomas Busby, who was a fraudster and a drunkard, loved his wooden chair. In 1702, he fell in love with a young woman named Elizabeth Howarty. Her father, Daniel, did not approve and came to drag Elizabeth away from their home in a local inn. As Busby arrived back in the inn, he was most offended to find Daniel Howarty sitting in his favourite chair so he murdered him. Normal reaction. As he was later tried and hung for the murder, he swore a curse that all that sit in his best chair will die. This chair ever since has been rumoured to be haunted by Busby himself. The chair stayed in the inn for years, reportedly taking the lives of 63 people who sat in it. One chimney sweep who sat in the chair while drinking at the pub was found hanged nearby the next morning, and it's said that all those who sat in the chair ever since who went to war did not come back. As late as the 1970s, 2 people died after sitting in the chair. Luckily, it was then taken away and put in a museum and strung up on the ceiling so no one can sit in it ever again. Okay, we are here at number 1. The possessed items on this list seem to have a varying degree of legitimacy. However, this last one really does have an irrefutably concerning history. I can't get over this. At number 1, we have Franz Ferdinand's car. Many history buffs will know that World War I was triggered by the murder of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife in Bosnia. The pair were in their luxury Graf and Stift limousine, which stalled at the very wrong moment outside a cafe from which a man who'd previously tried to assassinate him was just exiting. What a crazy coincidence. Their deaths, probably caused by the stalled car in part, were not the last tragedy to befall the limo. The car's second owner, General Potierek, went insane after driving the car and was soon committed to an asylum. Many say the car is possessed by an evil spirit. In fact, throughout the war and the period shortly after, the limo was involved in 6 accidents and 13 deaths. Why are people still driving this thing? If we're also to attribute the car as the direct cause of the death of Franz Ferdinand, and thus the sparker of the First World War, it could also be directly linked to the death of 17 million people, which in turn set the stage for the death of 60 million people in World War II. So that car has some blood on its hands. Suffice to say, after a final death spree in which 5 people travelling to a wedding were killed, the car was finally donated to the War History Museum of Vienna in 1926 and has caused no deaths since. Thank God. Alright, coming in at number 10 we have the glass jar. As we know, the Americans, with the support from the Allies, dropped the horrifying atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The attacks killed over 200,000 people horribly, and the cities were absolutely decimated. Imagine how fragile human flesh is when it comes to heat, and then imagine how hot something would need to be to melt glass. Hot, right? Have a look at this glass jar found in the Hiroshima aftermath. It seems that heat of approximately 1,500 degrees centigrade, 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit, is required to produce this level of deformity. Scientific examination showed that a virtually instantaneous heat wave struck this object and passed as quickly as it had arrived. Basically, the jar resumed its solidified form without leaving stress marks. The flash heat incinerated many people on the spot too, which is absolutely horrible, and this jar just goes to show how hot it really was. Always my thoughts going out to the cities of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, many years later. Coming into number 9, we have The Pilot. This portrait of a World War II pilot in its original 1940s frame was listed on eBay. The listing reads, "This haunted picture holds the energy of an old pilot's ghost." When the haunted picture is set out on display, many people have witnessed a man dressed in uniform appear in hallways and doorways of the house. A deep man's voice can be heard at late hours of the night. I can usually hear military jargon being shouted at fast speed. I don't know why this energy is so attached to this haunted picture, or what this ghost is trying to tell me. Weird. The listing also claimed that only those with the quote-unquote gift would be able to feel the presence. Rightio then. Coming into number 8, we have the World War II wheelchair. This wheelchair is haunted by the ghosts of hundreds of wounded soldiers. Why? Well, the chair was the property of a military hospital during World War II, and it is thought that it contains the spirits of those who sat in it. Sure. Chair owner Neil Packer said that when he sat in the chair, he felt as if his leg had been amputated. Weird. He said that another man's leg went blue after a brief stint in the chair. Another sitter said that she felt like her chest was heavy as if she'd had an infection. The chair was actually taken onto British television too. It featured on This Morning with hosts Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby, and Phil decided to sit in it. Honestly, I feel like if I've learned anything across my 4 years of working on Most Amazing Top 10, it's that you should never sit in the haunted chair. Does anyone remember the Busby stoop chair now chained to the ceiling in Yorkshire? Like, seriously, don't sit in the haunted chairs. But unfortunately, Phil couldn't have listened to me because I made this video after he sat in it, and I don't think he watches the channel, but maybe he should. Nonetheless, he sat in the chair on live TV, and this was his reaction.
The chair?
Yeah.
How
do you feel?
I feel like...
No, don't be ridiculous. Don't be annoying.
Just joking, this is actually what he said after making that face.
perfectly normal.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
No twinges in your leg?
I have no twinges. I have absolutely nothing going on here whatsoever.
Coming into number 7, we have the pigeon foot. That's not a pigeon sound. Do pigeons make sounds? I don't know. You'll actually find a lot of severed pigeon feet in war museums across the world. Why? Because birds played a very big part in the war. Pigeons were used to send secret messages, but as you can imagine, that brought about a whole new layer of chaos that came from trying to intercept them and stop enemies finding them. One pigeon that failed in its delivery mission was discovered in 2012 in an English chimney in Surrey. David Martin was cleaning his block's chimney and found that one dead bird had a red capsule on its leg. He opened it up and discovered a secret World War II era message written in code. Eventually the code was cracked and the message was discovered to say, "Hit Jerry's right or reserve battery here. Already know electrical engineers headquarters, troops, panzers, batteries, engineers here." Of course, Jerry, I have to say, was the nickname for the Germans, for those of you watching that didn't know. So, vital intel that was never delivered on account of dead pigeon in chimney. Coming into number 6, we have the Trench Raiding Club. War is savage, and that's pretty evident in the existence of this raiding club. Many old weapons were found after the war, and often these clubs were found. Now they're usually made from wood wrapped in sharp pieces of metal, which to me sounds very medieval. Clubs and flails have been used since times of early warfare. While trench clubs were largely used in World War I, some were still found after World War II, and honestly I can't believe in the 20th century we were still whacking each other with spikes on sticks. Although, thinking about that, I maybe would prefer meeting those than some of the other World War II weapons. Although, actually, maybe the sticks. No, the stick. Brutal. It's brutal. It's all brutal. It's all got very morbid too. I'm imagining being hit with a big stick. Coming into number 5, we have the trumpets that started the war. These scary wartime objects were actually from an ancient period in history. In 1922, King Tutankhamun's tomb was opened. Now this was a period between the First and Second War. A lot of people were very nervous about the whole thing, and perhaps for good reason, as this is where the legends of the Curse of the Pharaoh began. Among the artifacts, silver, wooden and bronze trumpets were found. Now the trumpets were played and recorded in 1939 on British radio, the BBC. A few months after it was broadcasted, World War II broke out and the announcement was delivered to the British public on the same radio station. This has led many to believe that the trumpets are cursed and actually have the power to summon war. This is one of the only instances where I would ever be like, do not play the trumpets. Usually I wholeheartedly encourage trumpet playing. I love trumpets, they're great, but war trumpets are bad. Yes, they are. Coming into number 4, we have the lost bombs, and the found bombs, but mostly the lost bombs are the concern. So a lot of worrying undetonated bombs have been found since World War II. Just last year, 1,000 people were evacuated from their homes in Cologne in Germany when a World War II bomb was discovered near a petrol station in the city, which doesn't sound like a great combination. That wasn't even the worst of it. In 2011, 45,000 people were forced to evacuate their homes when a drought revealed a big unexploded bomb in the Rhine near Koblenz. The scary fact is that thousands of unexploded bombs are still sitting hidden and buried across Europe. Do you want to hear a scary statistic? 70 years later, more than 2,000 tons of unexploded munitions are uncovered on German soil every year. Terrifying. Sadly, coming into number 3, we have the body parts. It wasn't just the Nazis mutating their enemies, a lot of countries were at it. It seems that actually a vast amount of Americans who took part in World War II and were stationed in the Pacific would wear Japanese body parts as trophies, which is disgusting. Luckily, the majority of these have been destroyed, but necklaces made of Japanese teeth were fashioned. Ears were pinned to military belts, and it is even said that Franklin Roosevelt, the President of the United States, was given the gift of a letter opener made out of a Japanese soldier's arm. A bunch of trophy skulls were found after the war. Skulls of dead Japanese people were given to Americans as gifts. Here's a picture of a woman that appeared in a magazine in 1944 that shows her writing to her sweetheart to thank him for the skull. Honestly, I can think of more romantic gifts, but like, whatever. Actually, not whatever. Judging you. Skulls. Gross. Stick to flowers, please. Coming into number 2, I do love a ghost ship. We have the Queen Mary. So the Queen Mary is more than just a haunted object. It's a haunted object filled with hundreds of other haunted objects and floating. When World War II began, British ship the Queen Mary was converted into a transportation ship for Allied troops. She transported 800,000 troops to Europe in her time. Unfortunately though, she was involved in an accident which killed 239 people. The Queen Mary was retired in 1967 after another stint as an ocean liner. She is now a permanently docked hotel in Long Beach, California, but it is said that she is mercilessly haunted by a number of souls. It seems the swimming pool is haunted by the spirit of a young girl. A first-class passenger, dubbed the Woman in White, glides across the floor of the Queen's salon in a long dancing gown. The ship has had to retire the use of room B340 because there have been so many complaints of its haunting. Those who have been on the ship tend to report ghostly goings on, and they have done for decades. Ever since the ship was a working transport ship, people have been spotting ghosts. Scary, but I do love a ghost boat. Coming in at number 10, we have the Diebuck box. A normal object turned supernatural turned cursed. What a journey. The Diebuck box is said to be a haunted wine cabinet filled with a restless spirit. Interestingly, the wine cabinet had a Jewish prayer carved into the back of it, which is maybe what attracted the ghoul. The spirit in question is allegedly a Holocaust survivor, Haveka, who escaped to Spain. The box was famously sold on eBay in 2003 and has spent the past 16 years bouncing between owners who don't want it, and I can understand why. It seems each owner has fallen on horrifying misfortune and suffered reoccurring nightmares. One owner suffered a stroke shortly after receiving the box as a gift. Apparently the box has now been hidden by Jewish rabbis, thank goodness. The box actually has a connected film with it, The Possession, which came out in 2012. I think it was based on the wine box events. Coming in at number 9, we have the Occult Museum Voodoo Dolls. Voodoo dolls in general are supernatural items. They're little effigies created in magical kind of practices, and for the person on the receiving end, they're bad juju. Pins are placed in the doll in order to harm the subject, which isn't great, not great at all. So with that in mind, a supernatural object used to invoke a curse, do you want to see the voodoo dolls from the Ed and Lorraine Warren Museum? Guys, you don't know how hard it is to say Ed and Lorraine Warren in one go. It's a tongue twister. Ed and Lorraine Warren. Either way, voodoo dolls. So there is actually a noose on the neck of one of the dolls, which kind of indicates that somebody might have died. The other one has its eyes gouged out, which isn't great either. Visually scary, but also actually scary. It seems that the doll collector came across these dolls and brought them home, only to find that her son's health began deteriorating. It seems that some of the witch's voodoo doll magic had been retained, and it was picked up the boy as a new vessel. The collector contacted the Warrens, who removed the doll, after which the boy made a full recovery, thank goodness. However, it seems that the story continues. There was a visitor to the museum and they broke the rules by touching one of the dolls, and later they were involved in a horrifying accident. Who's to blame here? Coming in at number 8, we have the Bassano vase. At first, the Bassano vase is a sight to behold. It's a beautifully carved silver vase from the 15th century. It's an antique. But as it's on this list, you may have realised that actually it's a supernatural antique with a curse. Hurrah! The story goes that the vase was made for an Italian wedding as a gift to the bride, who is to be wed in a traditional ceremony in Napoli. On her wedding night, she was excited. But unfortunately an intruder broke in and stabbed her. She was found bleeding to death clutching the vase. The legend has it that she promised to return and seek vengeance on the person who stopped her marrying her love. After her death, the vase was passed down through the family, but anyone who came in contact with it mysteriously fell ill, or they were met with serious misfortune. Following that, the vase was wrapped up and packed away, but unfortunately it was unearthed again hundreds of years later in the late 80s, when it also started making headlines for continuing its spate of deadly bad luck. Newspaper reports indicate that the vase was buried again in an undisclosed location, hoping that it would stay out of the way with human contact forever this time. Coming in at number 7, we have the evil eye. The curse of the evil eye. Although actually, this is an interesting twist at this point, because these objects actually protect against curses. The evil eye is a curse cast by a malevolent and malicious glare given to a person when they aren't looking. If an evil eye is cast upon you, you are susceptible to injury or misfortune. It could even mean that you're set upon by animals. To protect yourself from the evil eye, usually people carry a talisman with an eye on it, which in themselves look pretty terrifying, but actually they're there to stare down a curse. The evil eye has been incorporated into a lot of protective objects, most popularly jewellery. Also, there are a lot of evil eye wall hangings and wind chimes. I feel like I'd quite like an evil eye bracelet so it can stare down a few evil eyes that have been looking my way recently, like, bah! Reflected curse. Coming in at number 6, we have cursed tarot cards. Tarot cards are used in divination, for forecasting rather than predicting. Usually a person formulates a question and seeks an answer from the cards, a deck of 78 individual cards with different meanings. The most famous cards are Death, the Tower and the Devil, all thought to be bad omens. But of course that depends on your interpretation. Some people are convinced that their tarot decks can become cursed and that everything that's forecast will actually happen badly. There is also a superstition that burning tarot cards will bring a curse upon you. It seems that the only way to be rid of a cursed deck of tarots is to drown them, soak them all face down in water. Honestly, I'm not so sure about that. I think they work by energy, so if you have bad energy, maybe you'll get bad cards. Coming in at number 5, we have Maori masks. Maori is the name of the indigenous people of New Zealand and Polynesia. Masks are made to honour their ancestors, and they're often beautifully carved and slightly intimidating to look at. The masks are thought to contain the souls of warriors who died in battle, so pretty supernatural and ghostly if you ask me. While men are fine to be going around touching a Maori mask, females have a much more uncertain time. Legend has it you should never seek out a Maori mask if you're pregnant or menstruating because you could invoke an ancient curse. In October 2010, a museum in New Zealand made headlines when it told a pregnant woman to stay away from the sacred artifacts. Speaking of sacred, at number 4 we have Uluru. Is a rock formation an object? Either way, I'm putting it on this list. Uluru or Ayers Rock is both sacred and cursed, if the stories are to be believed. The large sandstone monolith in the Northern Territory of Central Australia is sacred to Aboriginal tribes, the first people of the land. They believe that it is inhabited by the ancestral spirits of the land. The rock started forming 550 million years ago, and it's believed that if a visitor takes a rock from the spot, they will suffer serious misfortune, sometimes even grave misfortune. There have been reports of people returning stones that they've taken from Ayers Rock to try and end their suffering. Shouldn't be taking the rocks in the first place. Coming in at number 3, we have the Terracotta Army. I kind of believe that the Terracotta Army have an air of the supernatural about them. They were, after all, a work of funeral art that were buried with the purpose of protecting an emperor in the afterlife. The thousands of terracotta figures were buried with the first emperor of China in 210 BCE, but they were rediscovered by local farmers thousands of years later in 1974 in Yang Village's rural land. For them though, the discovery was actually a curse. The government didn't pay them well for their findings, and then they took their land and their homes off them in order to build a tourist centre. The government made a lot of money, they didn't. One of the farmers who discovered the soldiers actually killed himself, and the others were met with bad luck, many of whom have died penniless. Coming into number 2, whatever you do, do not touch the demon book. The Book of Soiga is an early 16th century treatise on demonology written in Latin. There are only 2 copies of the book in the world known to us, and one was possessed by the Elizabethan scholar John Dee. Dee spent his life trying to interpret the text, which was filled with spells and rituals. He had a good understanding of what was happening, apart from the final 36 pages, which he just couldn't decipher. He and his trusted friend Edward Kelly summoned the spirit of Uriel to tell them the meaning of the last pages. The legend says that Uriel then possessed Kelly and spoke through him. He claimed that the book came into existence when Adam entered paradise and that it could only be properly interpreted by the archangel Michael himself. He also said that whoever deciphers the meaning of the last 36 pages will be destined to die 2.5 years later. Why 2.5? We don't know, but I wouldn't want to be reading that book. Finally, coming into number 1, we have the Delhi Purple Sapphire. Also known as the Gem of Sorrow, the Delhi Purple Sapphire was housed in a sacred temple in India, the Temple of Indra in Kanpur. Indra, by the way, is the Hindu god of war and thunderstorms. Amid the British-led turmoil in India, it wasn't uncommon for soldiers to loot sacred temples, stealing their jewels and smuggling them back to Britain. This is exactly what happened with the purple sapphire in question. Colonel W. Ferris took it back to England only to be met with terrible luck. Financial misfortunes befell him, his family got very sick, things started to fall apart. He gave the stone away, and the person who received it committed suicide. The next owner of the sapphire was Edward Heron Allen, who was also met with really bad luck. He bound the stone with silver and attached 2 scarab beetles, and it seemed like the bad luck was contained. However, his dreams were frequently haunted by Hindu yogis until he gave the stone away. The stone then was returned to him, so he threw it in Regent's Canal in London. No prizes for guessing that actually it came back. The story continues over another 100 or so years. More recently, it found its way to a museum, and one night the museum curator was travelling with the stone only to be injured by a terrible storm with his wife.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have space energy. While a team of astronomers was working to map out the universe, which, for a second, imagine that's your job. What a task. Anyway, while they were doing this, they found a very mysterious object that is sending out bursts of energy every 20 minutes. This object is somewhere around 4,000 light years away, but despite this distance, it was sending out energy bursts that were so big that it was one of the largest radio sources in the entire sky. That's no easy feat. These energy bursts were occurring in a cycle where one would happen for 1 minute every 20 minutes before it would disappear for a few hours, and then this whole thing would repeat over again. There is nothing that we know of in this universe right now that would behave like this, so at the moment, while there are of course many hypotheses and theories, this is a mystery waiting to be uncovered. In our number 9 spot today, we have 2022 AE1. Just a few months ago in January, as the year began, scientists were watching an asteroid dubbed 2022 AE1 that became the riskiest one observed in over a decade. The initial observations of this asteroid placed it impacting with Earth on roughly July 4th, 2023, which would mean that there would not be enough time to deflect it, and this asteroid was large enough to do some real damage should it strike an area. Yeah, it was most definitely a cause for concern. There was a week where the moon outshone this asteroid, and so experts weren't able to see it and continued tracking its path, but once the moon was out of this phase, the risk seemed to have diminished. As of now, this asteroid has been taken off of the risk list, but who knows? It seems as though things can change quite quickly and unexpectedly outside the cozy home and protection of our atmosphere. In our number 8 spot today, we have a meteorite. On February 28th, 2021, reports came pouring in from across the UK of an unusual streak of light that was seen in the sky. These reports were far behind the UK's Fireball Alliance though, as their cameras had already picked up the signal and they were already in the midst of estimating its landing site. That's right, this streak of light was a meteor, if the title didn't give it away. It's a remnant of our early solar system that has been flying through space at unbelievable speeds until it came down through our atmosphere and ended its long, awesome journey scattered in a bunch of pieces across rural Gloucestershire. Teams were sent out to be responsible for the recovery of the extraterrestrial material, which was found in a family's driveway as well as in a sheep's field nearby. This meteorite is a rare specimen known as primitive carbonaceous chondrite, which is said to contain materials that have been essentially unaltered since the formation of the solar system 4.5 billion years ago. The pieces of this meteorite can give us insights into the building blocks of the planets, and it can potentially give us clues as to how the Earth came to be this wonderful planet that possesses all of the resources necessary to sustain human life. In our number 7 spot today, we have King Tut's meteorite. So I actually learned about this one from Taylor, since he's the little history bee, and it is so interesting. Quite recently, researchers made quite the discovery that actually solved a mystery surrounding a dagger that once belonged to King Tut 3,400 years ago. An analysis of the king's weapon found that it was actually forged out of meteorite just outside of Egypt.
That is so cool. This whole artifact and the way it was forged is one of the greatest mysteries in history. It is exceptionally unusual in the fact that it was made out of iron, which is a material that the Egyptians would not begin to smelt for another 500 years. This was just one of the many treasures that was found within his tomb, and one that continues to add to the incredible accomplishments of the ancient Egyptians. In our number 6 spot today, we have Tabby's star. This star, which has also been referenced as the WTF star, is an F-type main sequence star which is located in the constellation Cygnus, about 1,470 light-years away from Earth. This star is of particular importance because of the fact that it shows unusual light shifts, which includes a 22% dimming in brightness. Basically, from our point of view, something continually blocks the star, and it likely isn't a planet because a Jupiter-sized planet would only block about 1% of the star the size of this one, so what could it possibly be? There are a few theories out there surrounding this anomaly, but none are able to fully explain what is happening here. Some believe that it is some sort of uneven ring of dust orbiting the star, and others believe that the star's luminosity fluctuates depending on the efficiency of the heat being transported to its photosphere. These are just 2 of the theories surrounding this star, but there are many more out there, and at this point we just don't know. Hopefully though, the James Webb Telescope, which was launched at the end of last year, will be able to get a more clear picture of what may be happening over there on Tabby's star. In our number 5 spot today, we have new material. Of course, when meteorites show up to Earth, people are dying to get their hands on them to study them and see what all they contain. We get some pretty incredible deliveries of things that arrive on meteorites, and analysis has been able to identify about 300 minerals in different space debris that comes down to Earth, and 40 of those are ones that have only been found in meteorites. This is all very cool and interesting, but one of the most fascinating is the Allende meteorite. This is one that exploded over Mexico in 1969, and after analyzing samples from it, in 2012 scientists announced the discovery of a material that had never been seen on Earth, and that frankly no one knew was even possible to make. It was called pangite, and it consists of quite a strange variety of elements, including titanium, zirconium, and scandium. In our number 4 spot today, we have CFBD SIR 2149. Ah yes, the rogue planet with the easiest name to remember. This planet really had the scientific community on edge in 2012. This is because most of the planets we are familiar with orbit a star. I mean, look at the one we're most familiar with. We clearly and thankfully do. That's not the case for this guy though. CFBD SIR 2149 seems to just be drifting across space without any sort of star. This planet is also huge. It is thought to be 7 times more massive than Jupiter, and Jupiter is quite a bit more massive than Earth. This isn't necessarily anything that we need to worry about. I mean, we're at home in our solar system with our star, not wandering around the universe or galaxy, so that's good. I mean, let's just hope it stays that way. Astronomers believe that there are likely billions of rogue planets, and that they might even outweigh the amount of planets that have suns. In our number 3 spot today, we have shooting stars. Okay, so we often look to the night sky in an attempt to see a shooting star, and the chances might be pretty good depending on how light polluted the area is. I mean, either that or you're seeing one of the Starlink satellites, but either way, we know that shooting stars aren't really stars at all, and are instead meteors burning up as they move quickly through Earth's atmosphere. But what if I told you that there really are some shooting stars that are actually stars? Hypervelocity stars were discovered by astronomers in 2005, and it is thought that they occur, or form, when a binary star system, or a star system that has 2 stars, gets destroyed by a black hole. One of the stars in the system will usually fall into the black hole, which just may send the other one flying across through space as fast as millions of miles per hour. It's definitely not the same thing that we think of when we think of shooting stars, but it is quite the galactic event. In our number 2 spot today, we have quasars. If you aren't exactly familiar with them, they are super compact objects that kind of have a star-like appearance as they are very luminous, and it is thought that these guys are powered by supermassive black holes. So there's obviously quite a few interesting things about these, but one of the most interesting is in relation to one in particular called APM 082795255. This one contains a black hole that is surrounded by a vapor cloud, and within the cloud is 140 trillion times the amount of water on the Earth. It's the largest water reservoir ever discovered. That's insane. Researchers believe that this giant watery cloud formed long ago, just 1.6 billion years after the universe itself. In our number 1 spot today we have stardust. Just a few years ago, researchers in Australia made a startling discovery. Ancient grains that were discovered inside of a meteorite that had landed inside of the country were studied, and it was revealed that they were actually grains of stardust. This dust was formed somewhere from 5 to 7 billion years ago, and it is now the oldest solid material ever found on Earth. These kinds of pre-solar grains are a very rare find. In fact, they're so rare that they're only found in about 5% of meteorites that have fallen to Earth. This is a fascinating discovery because having something like this really is the next best thing aside from having the actual star itself, and it gives insight into our universe billions and billions of years ago. In our number 10 spot today we have the Dybbuk box. The box, which was originally just a plain old wine box, is said to have been possessed by a Dybbuk, which, in Jewish mythology, is a malicious demon that takes over the bodies of living people and uses them for evil. The box began to gain attention in 2001 when it was being auctioned off on eBay. The seller explained that he had bought it at an estate sale of a woman who had survived the Holocaust. When he first opened the box, he found 2 1920s pennies, a lock of blonde hair bound with a cord, a lock of black hair bound with a cord, a small statue engraved with the Hebrew word shalom, a small golden wine goblet, 1 dried rosebud, and a single candle holder with 4 octopus-shaped legs. Since he bought the box, he reported that strange things began happening, such as really horrific nightmares for him and anyone who had stayed around or touched the box, and when he gave the box to his mother as a birthday gift, she suffered a stroke the same day. The box ended up in the hands of Zach Bagan, who is a paranormal investigator, and it now resides in his haunted museum. The box also gained even more attention in 2018 when Post Malone touched it, and has apparently been dealing with the repercussions of that ever since. In our number 9 spot today we have the Iceman. Okay, this one is not an object because it is rather a mummy who was once a real living person, but I still had to include him on this list today because this story is wild. The mummy of Otzi, who is also referred to as the Iceman, was found in 1991 in the Otzal Alps in Italy. It is believed that Otzi lived around 3000 BCE, and his body became mummified and preserved because of the glacier that surrounded him post-mortem. While this is an incredibly interesting discovery, the finding of Otzi may have come in a package with an old curse just waiting to be released. Here's the thing. The people who helped with the discovery of Otzi are all dying under mysterious circumstances. I mean, we're currently at person number 7 within 1 year, so that's very suspicious. When molecular archaeologist Tom Loy was writing a book about Otzi, he passed away from a blood-related condition that he was diagnosed with shortly after becoming involved with the Iceman. The German tourist Helmut Simon, who discovered the mummy, fell to his death while hiking in the same spot he saw Otzi. Dieter Warneck, who was the head of the mountain rescue team that was assigned to find the mummy, died of a heart attack at age 45, just an hour after Simon's funeral. To avoid this becoming an hour-long list, I'll stop here, but that is just half of those who seemingly fell victim to the curse of the Iceman. I don't know, maybe disturbing a man who's been in the same spot for 53 centuries wasn't the best idea anyone has ever had. In our number 8 spot today we have the Hope Diamond. This gorgeous, unusually large diamond is a blue color and worth an insane $250 million. In the off chance you have that kind of money laying around, I still wouldn't recommend purchasing it because it is said to be cursed. The curse dates back to the 17th century, and it is said that whoever wears the diamond will have great misfortune and misery. Legend goes that the diamond was stolen from the eye of a sculpted statue of the Hindu goddess Sita, and since then it has been cursing whoever owns or possesses the 115-carat diamond. Stories of the horrible fates of those who have since owned the diamond include people taking their own lives, people being killed intentionally by others, and some accounts even claim that the owner was, quote, torn to pieces, which sounds like one of the worst fates out there. There have since been replicas made of the stone, and I think just to be as safe as possible, I'll probably stay away from those. Just in case. In our number 7 spot today we have Robert the Doll. Annabelle gets a lot of attention for being a haunted doll, but Robert is just as terrifying. Robert the Doll was a childhood birthday gift from a grandfather to his grandson, who was also named Robert, but more often went by Gene. The story claims that while growing up with Robert, Gene would often be heard by his parents in his bedrooms having conversations with himself in 2 entirely different voices. His parents would sometimes be woken up in the middle of the night to the sound of Gene screaming, only to find find him completely frightened in bed with overturned furniture around him. Jean would then blame Robert for all of the strange happenings, and at the time, no one really believed him. Jean kept Robert into adulthood, and it became what people would describe as an unhealthy relationship. Apparently, Jean took Robert everywhere with him and spoke as if he was a living entity rather than a doll. Okay, this story is already not great, but it gets worse. Jean lived in a house as an adult that was called the artist's house. Robert would be left in the upstairs window where children in the area reported seeing the doll disappear and reappear, and they all chose to just stay clear of the house. After Jean passed away in 1974, a woman named Myrtle purchased the house, and apparently Robert as well. Visitors of the house could swear that they could hear footsteps and giggling coming from the attic where Robert was, and some even claimed to see the doll's expression changed if someone spoke poorly of Jean. Myrtle reported Robert moving around the house on his own, and after 20 years she decided she had had enough and donated him to a museum. Robert still lives in the museum where he is safely locked up, but it is said that he still likes to place a little curse on those who take his photo without permission. The walls of the museum near Robert's glass case are riddled with notes from previous visitors and naysayers who are begging Robert for his forgiveness and asking him to remove any curse he has placed on them. In our number 6 spot today we have the Atlantis Ring. The Atlantis Ring was originally made of clay, and it was found in 1860 in the Valley of the Kings in a tomb of an Egyptian high priest. It was then passed on to Howard Carter, who kept it until he passed away in 1939. The ring was believed to be at least 5,000 years old, and it had geometric symbols carved into it that were unlike anything known in Egypt. Here's where the story gets a little weird though. Howard is one of the people who discovered King Tut's tomb, and he would later tell people he was wearing a talisman when the tomb was opened, also known as the Atlantis Ring. He claimed that the ring gave him protection, and that just might be true because he is the only member of the team who didn't die a mysterious death after the opening of the tomb. Even those who visited shortly after the opening of the tomb were subject to this curse, with a total of 18 victims in the end. Howard said that the ring is what protected him against whatever evil forces were at play. So I guess maybe the Atlantis Ring is more like an anti-cursed object? I don't know, but what I do know is that it is all quite curious. There are now replicas that are sold, but I'm not sure if any hold the power of the real deal. In our number 5 spot today we have Thomas Busby's chair. Thomas was a man who lived in Thirsk, North Yorkshire, and wasn't known as a very nice man, but he really loved his chair. I guess we all gotta have something. In 1702 he found his father-in-law sitting in it, and it sparked an argument between the two. The father-in-law threatened to take his daughter back, which should have never been a threat considering she's a grown woman, but I guess that's what went on in 1702. Anyway, that's when Busby kicked him out of the house. After this, Busby ended up going over to the father-in-law's house and actually killed him with a hammer and then hid his body in the woods. Of course, the body ended up being found, and this led to Busby getting convicted and sentenced to death. It is said that on his ride to the execution, he asked to stop by his favorite pub for a beer, and this request was fulfilled. Apparently, as he finished his drink, he said, "May sudden death come to anyone who dares sit in my chair." I really don't know what it is with this guy in his chair, but while it currently resides in the Thirsk Museum, it has been recorded that many terrible fates have been met by the people who have sat in the chair. In 1972, it was decided to hang the chair from the ceiling so that no one could ever sit in it again, which is probably for the best. So now, knowing this story, I want you to let me know in the comments, if you had the chance, would you sit in the chair? I wouldn't. In our number 4 spot today we have Annabelle the doll. When I saw the 2014 Annabelle movie, I had no idea it was actually based on a real life doll, but since starting my job here at Most Amazing Top 10, I know all about the real story. This doll now resides inside of the Warrens Occult Museum, where it absolutely belongs, but this story starts off with a college student named Donna who received the doll as a gift from her mother, who had purchased it from an antique store. Donna and her roommate started to notice some pretty creepy things happening and swore that the doll was moving. They said it would appear in different places and positions throughout their apartment before things began to escalate. Donna began to find notes that said help in her apartment, and one night found the doll in a different position and covered in some sort of red substance. The girls then decided to contact a medium who solidified all of their beliefs and told them that the doll had been possessed by the spirit of someone who was killed in their apartment building. For some reason, the girls didn't immediately get rid of the doll, and the story goes that their friend Lou, who was at the girls' apartment, heard strange noises one night and went to investigate, and he was then attacked and killed by Annabelle. The girls finally contacted a priest who told them that the doll was possessed by a demon straight from hell, and then put them in contact with Ed and Lorraine Warren. They tried to do an exorcism on the doll, but it apparently failed, and now it is kept in a glass box in the museum, where it hopefully cannot and will never do any more damage. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Uluru Rock. The Uluru Rock is a large sandstone formation that is located in the southern part of the Northern Territory in Australia. It is sometimes known as Ayers Rock, but regardless of what it is called, this area is sacred for the people indigenous to this place. This is part of the reason that those who visit the rock are asked not to take anything from the site. Despite this, people of course still choose to smuggle pieces of the rock out of the area and home with them. Well, other than the bad karma and just in general feeling like a bad person for doing the one thing you're asked not to do, as it turns out, this rock may hold a more sinister secret. Those who have stolen rocks from the Uluru have experienced things like extremely bad luck, severe illness, and even sometimes the death of those they love. The curse these rocks hold is seemingly so bad that it is very common for the company that runs the tours of the formation to receive letters of apology that contain the stolen rocks. Apparently these letters come so often, at least one a day is expected. Maybe this is a weird coincidence, but it just seems to be happening a little too often for that to be the explanation. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Bazzano vase. The Bazzano vase was cast from silver in the 15th century and was apparently a wedding present for a bride who lived in a small village in Napoli. On the wedding night, however, the bride was found dying on the floor with her hands wrapped around the vase. With her last breaths, she vowed to have her revenge, and at this point it became unclear whether the vase was already cursed, or perhaps if this may be what caused the curse in the first place. As time went on, the vase was handed from person to person within her family, and with each new owner came a mysterious death. Because of this, the family decided to hide the vase away in some sort of secret location, and this worked for a while, until the vase was unearthed once more in 1988. The vase also contained a piece of paper from the family that warned, "Beware, this vase brings death." Well, of course, whoever found the vase did not listen, and instead, they sold it once again. The first buyer, who is said to have been a pharmacist, owned the vase for 3 months before passing away under mysterious circumstances. Then there was the 37-year-old surgeon who died after having the vase for 2 months. After this was the archaeologist who only made it 3 months with this vase in his possession, and at this point you get where this is going. We don't know exactly where the vase ended up, but I'm hoping it's somewhere deep underground. Or maybe in space. Or maybe in the Mariana Trench. Just anywhere far away from all of us. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Goddess of Death. This statue is sometimes also known as the Woman from Lem. This artifact, made out of limestone, was created sometime around 3500 BC, and it was found in Cyprus in 1878. Over the years, it has belonged to many different families who have all been ruined and dismantled by death. After the first 6 years of ownership, all 7 members of the first family died. It then moved on to a second owner, and after 4 years, death began to come to him and his family. There was then a long period where it was unclaimed, but once the third family got a hold of it, several members of that family began to die as well. The third family ended up turning it over to the Royal Scottish Museum, where it thankfully still resides. However, the museum curator who handled the item was mysteriously killed a few days after. It is clear whatever curse this statue holds, it is strong and frightening.